I would like to call the Township of Wainfleet regular council meeting of March 21st, 2023 to order. Please stand for the national anthem. Okay, we would like to begin this meeting by acknowledging the land on which we gather as the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe and the Haudenosaunee peoples, acknowledging the One Bowl and Spoon Treaty. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest tonight? Seeing none. Okay, please note that these meetings proceedings are being broadcast live, recorded, and made available through the Township website and YouTube.com. Niagara Region's final budget was passed at a 7.58% increase for the region's portion of property tax bills. There will be a special meeting of council held Friday, March 24th for council to tour the new central fire station. Our next regular meeting of council will be held Tuesday, April 4th at 7 p.m. Are there any announcements or remarks from members of council? Moving on to the minutes for the regular meeting held February 21st, 2023. Are there any comments or corrections for the draft minutes from February 21st, 2023? Okay, I will note one correction under the mayor's remarks. The regional budget increase was documented in the minutes as 7.29%, and the new corrected number is 7.58% increase. I now have a motion that the minutes of the regular meeting of council held February 21st, 2023 be adopted and noted correction. Can I get a mover in a second? Councilor McCullen, Councilor Anderson. Any discussion? Seeing none. All in favor? Opposed? And that's carried. Okay. Yep. Are there? Sorry. Oh, that's right. Okay. Are there any comments and corrections for the draft minutes from the special meeting held February 28th, 2023? No? Okay, then I have a motion that the minutes of the special meeting of council held February 28th, 2023 be adopted as circulated. Okay, a mover and seconder. Councilor McCullen, Councilor Anderson again. Any discussion? Seeing none. All in favor? Opposed? And carried. Okay, we're going to move on to the public meeting. The purpose of the public meeting is to provide information and gather public comments regarding the 2023 user fees and charges bylaw for various municipal services and activities for the use of township property and for proposed changes to 2023 building permit fees. Notice of the public meeting was given and meets the requirements of Section 7 of the Building Code Act. A bylaw establishing new 2023 fees and charges is anticipated to be considered by council, with new fees and charges coming into effect on April 1st, 2023. I will now ask our treasurer, Ms. Louie, to present staff report ASR 004/2023 respecting the 2023 proposed user fees and charges.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and councilors. So the public meeting regarding the 2023 user fees and charges for the Township of Wainfleet is addressed in ASR 004/2023. So just to note, before I provide some comments, that on page 12 of the fees and charges under section B, the per day community hall rental price has an error in it. So as approved, the 2022 fee, like the current fee, is $291.69, not $191.69. So therefore, the 2023 proposed fee would be $300.88 plus tax for a total of $340. So an increase of 3% has been applied to the majority of the fees in the bylaw to align with the inflationary pressures the township is experiencing, which has impacted the cost of providing goods and services to the community. Additional increases have been proposed to specific fees across various departments to better reflect the current cost of providing the service, as the intent of the fees and charges is full cost recovery whenever achievable.
Are there any questions or comments from members of council? Oh, Councillor Gilmore?
Push this thing. The only real concern I have is I'm not totally in favor of charging for the pre-consultation meeting. Like, I think people at some point need to be able to come in and sit down and figure out what they can do and what they can't do. I mean, the rest of it, I understand the rest of it, but if I have an issue with it, it would be that needs to just continue as it is, so that people are free to come in, get the information they need, and then go through the rest of the rather onerous process.
Ms. Earl, you want to speak to that?
Certainly, and through you, Mr. Mayor, thank you for those comments, Councillor Gilmore. From a planning perspective, and I had mentioned this to Council earlier, we will be seeing a lot of changes coming in the planning realm, specifically due to Bill 109 and Bill 23. Those reports and changes to our policies, like the zoning bylaw and the official plan, haven't come forward yet. That will be next. The addition for charging for fees for pre-consultation is going to help alleviate some of those staff resources and challenges that we will be facing, and there will be additional staff reports on that situation. 7 out of the 12 municipalities currently charge for pre-consultation, and Wainfleet has historically not charged. Understandable, you can imagine how much staff time and resources go into preparing for those types of meetings, and it's not just planning, it's building, it's engineering, it's fire. So we have multiple staff departments preparing for these meetings. With the changes in the bills coming up, with the legislative changes, we're going to be seeing a lot more challenges with returning of funds, application fees, and a lot more front-end loading on the planning process. So making sure that we're getting a lot of the information, more of the information up front. It would also include a review of the pre-submissions, because we're going to start requiring pre-submissions before applications are submitted, because that's when the clock's going to start ticking under the new Planning Act changes. So planning's taking a little bit different turn lately, and charging for pre-consultations is going to help alleviate that for township staff.
Any other? Councilor McClellan, go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councilor Gilmore's point, then if you still want to charge for it, is there a package somebody can pick up that tells you everything you need before you come into a pre-consultation meeting? Because, you know, Joe Public's going to walk in and figure it's just a quick meeting. There should be a complete package that he picks up, and he knows he needs this, he needs this, he needs this, he needs this, and he doesn't walk in here totally unarmed and pay us a fee, and he doesn't have what they need with them, he or she. So maybe that's something we should make up, and it'll be available to pick up at the counter. So before you make your appointment, you know what you need, and you've had time to go look for it.
Ms. Rowe, would you like to speak to that?
Yes, thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. We do right now have pre-consultation request packages, but really the interest here is that first point of contact. we're not changing the customer service level, we're only making it better. So the majority of people that are coming in and asking counter inquiries are getting information up front. We're sending them the information, we're giving them the package, they can get it offline, but we would do all of this work prior to even scheduling a pre-consultation meeting. And the pre-consultation meeting, again, has the commenting agencies in attendance. We're scheduling this in advance. We're circulating the information. We do actually need a lot of information up front before we even have that meeting, before we can determine what studies are going to be required and looking at the development as a whole. What might happen with this is that we're going to reduce the amount of what we would call tire kickers who are coming in and wanting to maybe purchase a property and say, what can I do with this? I don't see a need for them to be charged or take them to pre-consultation. Those conversations can happen at the counter before we even get to that point. So I just wanted to clarify that for council.
And Mr. Mayor, just to build on that, there is lots of opportunity for engagement with the planning staff, free of charge, in advance of the pre-consultation meeting. Again, there's a lot of opportunity. There's a lot of that needs to happen before they get to the pre-consultation meeting. And that pre-consultation meeting, as Lindsay has indicated, is a significant undertaking involving not only a lot of township resources attending that meeting, but a lot of external agencies attending that meeting. So there's a lot of work that goes into that. And honestly, as Lindsay indicated, with the advent of the recent provincial changes to legislation, the new timelines that they're putting in place for municipalities to process applications, as well as enforcement of those timelines through financial penalties to municipalities when those timelines are not being met. So the pre-consultation charge is really intended to sort of cushion and make sure that we have everything ahead of time in order before the sort of final application is is made. Sorry. Thank you.
Any other further comments, questions? Okay, seeing none, then I'll ask if there are any questions or comments from the members of the public. Okay, seeing none. Again, last chance. Any members of the public wish to speak? Yes. All right, I will now look to Ms. Louie to speak to the next steps.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So ASR 004-2023 will be presented for council consideration later in the agenda, as well as the accompanying bylaw numbered 13-2023 for council's consideration.
Thank you. That concludes our public meeting portion of the agenda. Moving on to delegations, there are no delegations listed on the agenda, so we'll move on to the 2023 draft operating budget. I will now ask our treasurer, Ms. Louie, to present the 2023 draft operating budget.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So through you to all of council. So following the operating budget meeting deliberation, staff have received direction from council to make reductions to the budget so the overall levy impact was less than 6% combined. Staff went back and performed a thorough and joint review on all departments and made decisions that we felt were reasonable while still maintaining the current service levels. Many items were non-discretionary with the current levels of service, so discretionary items were identified as well. Increases to revenues were made as appropriate, and reductions to expenditures were made in the areas of legal, training and professional development, as well as some maintenance items where corresponding capital purchases were approved. Operating expenses as it relates to the additional recreation vehicle have been removed in the current year as staff are delaying the procurement of that vehicle until the fall with an anticipated delivery date sometime in 2024. Staff would also like to note that as part of the review, the funds allocated for the Canada Day celebration, which originated in the budget for the Canada 150 celebration, have been removed as a cost-saving measure. At this time, staff would be happy to answer any questions that council might have.
Councilor McClellan?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. I see in the budget there that the estimate for the waterworks came in at roughly $200,000 over the budget. Now, 3 weeks ago when we sat in here, we were not allowed, strongly discouraged to touch the the relief fund, rate stabilization fund. All of a sudden, we can grab $200,000 out of it to do this. Why can't we take that out of development funds and leave that away? I mean, we were all preached to here by Ms. Louie, William, that was the holy grail. We can't touch that money. And then 3 weeks later, oh, you can take $200,000 out of it? No big deal. Who cares? That's just, it's not what we were preached at. I'm just wondering why all of a sudden you can get it.
Ms. Louie, can you speak to that?
Yep, so through the mayor to Councilor McClellan and all of council, excuse me, so what staff was recommending at the prior meeting was to not offset recurring costs, so recurring expenditures, i.e. the operating budget expenses, with rate stabilization. We are not going to have to repair the water system every single year. So this is in fact a one-time extraordinary expense, being that it's a capital item, which is what the rate stabilization fund, or one of the things that the rate stabilization fund was intended for.
So can we not take it out of the development fee?
So through the mayor to Councilor McClellan, so for starters, there's not that much in the development charges account to offset that, and that wasn't one of the projects identified in the development. The development charge is broken down by department, so we can't utilize, it's earmarked for specific projects within each bucket or category or department, this wasn't one of the projects that was identified during the development charge study.
That still doesn't make sense. If you have money there to do it, why aren't we using the development fee? Okay, it wasn't identified as it, but we can't develop this town anymore if we don't have water in town hall, and the fire hall, and the library, and the arena, so it doesn't make sense.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'll try to take a stab at it. Again, back to the use of the rate stabilization reserve to offset this one-time sort of capital expenditure. Hopefully that part of it is clear. Mm-hmm. As to the development charges reserve, again, development charges are established under a piece of provincial law called the Development Charges Act. It's extremely prescriptive, and there are extreme studies that are done in order to substantiate or account for the development charges that are approved by council by bylaw. Part of those studies is a thorough review of all the capital needs of the municipality that are potentially attributable as a result of development in the township. So when our study was being done a number of years back, the consultants or the experts that we brought in did a thorough review of our past expenditures and our anticipated needs arising from development. At no point during that study was replacement of the township's water system, existing system here, encountered or included as part of the analysis. As such, there were no funds that were being charged to development charges to offset those costs. Had the study identified the need for system replacement, and had the study identified that there's a growth component associated with that, then the study would have very likely recommended development charges that are actually higher than the ones we're charging now to fund the project that you're discussing right now. The other part of it is, as I think the treasurer alluded to, I don't think we have that amount of money in the development charges reserve in the first place. Okay. Going back the decades that development charges have been in place. I don't know if that helps or not.
I get it, but we pay somebody to come and do this study. They never took it into account. So they didn't really do their job, one. So, because we have a water system. You know you have to replace them, you have to repair them, but nobody took that into account. So we paid somebody to do it, and I think we do this every 5 years. So this has been going on, and these guys didn't do their job. So anyway, so let's just carry on then. So we saved some money on a dump truck. Why can't the savings go towards this water project? Where does the savings on that $400,000 dump truck that came in at under 400 grand, where's that money go? Because we approved 400 for the truck. So there's $40, $50, $55,000 somewhere in that neighborhood extra that isn't going to get spent on the truck. So why can't we put that on the water system?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, and perhaps the treasurer can correct me if I'm wrong, but the truck that is proposed to be purchased is actually going to be debentured. We're borrowing that money in order to fund the cost of the truck. We don't want to borrow necessarily the money in order to fund the water system replacement.
That's what I wanted to know, where it was, right? So
Yep, and that's all detailed in the budget sheets, but I guess the point is that, as mentioned before, the rate stabilization reserve is there not to fund sort of regular recurring costs, but sort of one-time, out-of-the-ordinary, unanticipated, primarily capital-related costs. And the water system replacement that we're seeing here, and when we get to the report, there'll be more opportunity to discuss it. It actually fits the rate stabilization reserve use exactly to the T. Like that's what it's there for.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? No? Okay. Go ahead, Councilor Gilmore.
Thanks. Well, I want to circle back to my ongoing topic of 9 years. Along with Joan, who actually did some of the math, like when you add up all this stuff, the number is starting to bother me now, because we've got $50,000 levied for this year, and it's been that way for the last 4 or 5 years, and probably will be again. So when you do the math on all that, in 20 years, that's $1 million just on training and PD. So that's the levy amount. We never spend it, which is the core of my problem. We never spend it. So this year, it's again proposed to add up to a total township-wide of $50,000. If we take the 2019, which was the last normal year we've had in the last 5 years, 2019, we spent $28,000. That was the actual, and some of those were very high. Like I'm still struggling, and I struggle every year to try to figure out why we can't stick to some real, actual numbers. Like, for instance, council, for instance, by the middle of March, where we are now, it's basically a known number what we're going to spend in any given year, because all these things that we are, quote, permitted to go to, people have already signed up for them. Councillor Van Vliet's gone or is going to one. The rest of us aren't going. I mean, we've already told you we're not going. So right there is $3,000 that's not going to get spent. And that goes on every year. And it's been going on every year for as long as I've been making this speech. So I have a couple questions. Why can't it just, we have a pool and you take out of it and we replace the pool for the next year based on what you spent the year before. Like, I realize there's probably 99 reasons why you can't do zero-based budgeting in the Municipal Act. Like, I don't know, I could be wrong, but this is just one of them that torques me right up. Like, you can give me some feedback, and then I'm probably going to make a motion. But I just can't get my head around why we can't get that number closer. Like, you must have a pretty good idea what everybody's going to do for the remaining 9 months of this year. A pretty good idea. And we haven't had much turnover. I understand in some years there's a lot of turnover. When there's a lot of new fire recruits, there's more training. But it's just not close enough for me. That's all.
Treasurer first, perhaps, and then I'd like to take a stab.
So through the mayor to Councillor Gilmore and all of council, so perhaps it's true that in this current year, we might know what this council is going to do for the remainder of the year. The trouble is we have policies and contracts that allow for certain council members to attend a conference if they so choose, or training of some sort if they so choose, as well as a collective agreement which has stipulations regarding training and professional development, as well as individual employee contracts, which have also additional things in there. So for us to kind of remove in a current year, because knowing that 2 or potentially 3 or maybe even 4 won't be attending a conference means we'll reduce the budget in this year just to increase it potentially in the next year, or at the very least at the change of an election, because we can't budget for a deficit. So if we know that everyone could potentially go to a conference, we have to ensure that we have that budget line available for that to happen.
So I suppose what the treasurer was explaining was the sort of financial obligations through agreements and other sort of policies that are in place. The thing I'd like to bring up is that we live in a changing world. Right around Christmas time, or right around the election last time, the province announced a whole slew of new piece of provincial legislation dealing with the Planning Act. There's nothing to stop the province from introducing a whole new slew of regulations or laws in the next 6 months, this year, which would require staff or others to attend various sessions, to learn about them, to obtain information about how they will be applied. All of that information is stuff that is potentially coming down the pipeline at us. And if we don't have the sort of resources allocated to be able to attend those training sessions on Bill 23, or the session that's going to be put on by AMO to deal with the regulations regarding, and again, there was an announcement just the other week regarding abandoned gas wells, that sort of thing. We need to be able to respond. So that definitely requires us to have some money available to be able to send staff to the appropriate sessions so that they can respond to those legislative changes. So I think all those together are sort of the rationale for why the numbers are where they are. Because if we're not prepared to be able to attend these sessions, then we don't know that we can be in compliance with the new act or the new regulation or whatever the case might be.
Yeah, I'm not suggesting that you don't attend things. I'm suggesting that every year for the last, as long as I've been here, you've levied 45 to 50% more than we've spent. Those numbers are historically accurate. So that's my problem. I've tried to exercise the patience of Job sitting here, but it's wearing thin because you continue to not want to use the actual numbers. So, and even if we did go over, you levied 45% more than we needed in I don't know how many years. That money is sitting in the rate stabilization fund. Take a little out of it. But like $1 million over 20 years, when you do the big math, that's a troubling figure for me. I don't see that. I don't see the value for that money. That's all. Which is largely why I don't go to these things. I mean, but that's my personal choice. I find them to be just regurgitating public funds. And I'm not suggesting that all the things that people go to fall into that category. The stuff that I would be able to go to definitely does, in my personal opinion, which is why I don't go. But there's been ample money that's been levied and not used for the last decade, as long as I've been around. And the pattern continues. That's the crux of my problem.
The only comment, again, I will reiterate what the treasurer said about the need for us to sort of meet our legal obligations under agreements and policies. And again, I'll sort of allude to a comment I made at the last meeting where there are instances where it might be appropriate for several staff, again, historically, in the past, to attend the same training session because they all fall within the scope of that training area. But I would sort of compliment staff in perhaps only one or two going instead of all five, and those one or two sort of attend, obtain all the information, bring the information back, share it with the others, and basically avoid some of the costs that could technically they're entitled to, not entitled to, but technically that they could have pursued. So again, I say that part of the reason that previous budgets have been able to come in, or expenses come in under budget, is sort of a dedication by staff to try and contain costs where possible, through sharing resources, through sharing training opportunities, and that sort of thing. So again, I hear what the councillor's saying, and if that's something that council as a whole is sort of supportive of looking at, then perhaps that's something that could be provided as direction for 2024's budget, and we come up with a new model for dealing with training across the municipality. But honestly, again, at this time, I think we're in the right spot from an operations perspective, and I'd recommend you give consideration to that if that's the sort of direction you want to move towards.
Councillor Anderson, go ahead.
I'm just wondering, this is to every staff, because you're all in departments and you all send people for training. Is it reasonable, I think my colleague is sort of indicating that he'd like to see a conference and training pool of funds, open-ended, and if we had $50,000 next year at the start of the year, and we sent people away for $35,000 worth of training, we'd have a reserve net left of $15,000. The next year we could top up the 35 so that we keep a solid number of sort of known expense historically, and that we're not levering on our base budget line year over year the same amount of money. We would drift money out of a flexible pool. And so we would be filling back in with net money that we spent. One year we might have our $50,000 pool might exercise $25,000 worth of training. And so we would have a levy coming at us the next year to refund the $25,000. So it's not that we wouldn't have $50,000 available for training. We would just have a flexible pool that we filled, rather than, I think my colleague's point of view is that it's the yearly base budget number of $50,000 that obviously the numbers would tell you that we come up with net underspending. We don't spend the 50, correct? Did that make any sense? Anybody?
Ms. Lou, you want to speak to that?
Sure. So through the mayor to Councillor Anderson. So part of the reason why it's not pooled and it is broken down by department is for comparability year over year, as well as accountability. So if looking back 3 years or 1 year or even just last year, there's a question about why one department was over budget on their professional development and one was under budget, it's easy enough for that department to, or should be easy enough for that department to have an explanation as to why that was over or under. If we have one budget line or one pooled expense account, it would just involve more time management to kind of track the spending that's going in and out of that account, as well as which department spent which, and harder to kind of identify if there was overages or unders on that account line. So I understand that the last couple of years haven't been normal because of the pandemic, but staff turnover does play a large role in this. I've been here in finance for just this time around for 8 years. There's only 4 people in my department, including me, and we haven't had the same 4 people for a full year since I've been here in these 8 years. We've had vacancies one way or another. So that does play a large role. When we have new staff come in and they're on probation, we are a little more reluctant, if it's not mandatory required training, to kind of invest in them until we're sure that it's a right fit for them and it's a right fit for us before we invest in that.
Through Mayor, if I might continue, I'm not suggesting that it would be an onerous process, because I don't think it would be, to have person from A, B, and C department draw out of a pool, and that department has a spend line under conferencing. And at the end of the year, in our summary budgets, we bring all that back. And every year it's just a story about department ABC spent X number of dollars. But what we're not doing is levying the volume every year. We're doing a top-up sort of against the levy. I just can't imagine that, the number of employees that we run here, I don't know how many go away on learning lessons or how often, but I have a hard time finding that to be an onerous process in bookkeeping and budgeting.
So just in response to that, Mr. Mayor, through you, and again, it's doable, but it's not automatic. There are sort of checks and balances that have to be built into the system in order to ensure that there is sort of an ability for some equitable distribution amongst the departments based on their need and based on their sort of demands. It's doable by all means, but it's not automatic. There will need to be some work put into sort of designing and making the system work, and then sort of monitoring the system from year to year, from month to month, as sort of the training opportunities present themselves. So it's doable by all means, but there's a bit of work to it.
Councilor McClellan, go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So I see this as, we leave it the way it is. At the end of the year, whatever money's left over, if it's $25,000, that $25,000 goes into next year's runover. It's not really hard. Whatever's left over doesn't go into the rate stabilization fund. It goes back into this. It's really pretty simple math. And then you just, whatever's left over goes in there, and we top it back up to 50 grand. It's not all that complicated. I know it's a change, and nobody likes change, but there isn't a lot of money here. We can't just keep going and tapping somebody for more money every year. We all got to listen to this.
Go ahead, Councilor Gilmore.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, I just want to go back to my initial comment about using 2019, the last real year. I can assure everybody in the room that every line in the last 4 years has been under, except for one time the fire was over, and probably because there was a whole bunch of new recruits that needed training, which is fine. But every other line for 4 years has been under. In 2019, it was the highest spend of any of the four. Now, before you use the C word, then COVID, to blame COVID on everything, that's why I went back to 2019, because it was a normal year. Like, I'm prepared to legislate a number. I don't really want to do that, but you probably can tell I've had enough. I've had enough of delivering this speech on this topic. So if we can't figure out how to zero base it and use real numbers, then I'm prepared to legislate it. Don't get me wrong.
Councilor Wainfleet, go ahead.
Through you, Mayor. My question's to Councillor Gilmore. So you're talking every line in the budget, right? Not just conferences, right?
No, I'm just referring to conferences and staff training.
Okay.
That's all.
Because you went from there to fire, so, okay.
Well, no, because they have a line for
Right.
conferences and staff training.
Okay, just,
Everybody does.
got it.
And their number, 1 year was over. Other years is under, just like everyone else.
Exactly.
It's always under.
I know it is.
If it wasn't always under, you wouldn't hear from me.
Right. But just to clarify, I'm not the only one who goes to conferences. I know other people at this table are signed up as well, so.
No other further questions or comments? Oh. Councilor Anderson, go ahead.
Through you, Mayor. I think what my colleague is looking for is a more direct method of managing the money. Not that we aren't, but I think when he talks about legislating a number, I think he wants to work out of that number and do an annual following year top-up. Now, however, and it will be the finance department that will bear the burden of figuring this out. But however we get to that number, I think the real point is that if we didn't spend $35,000, I believe my colleague wants to see the $35,000 as a static number for the next year with a top-up of 15 back up to his number of 50. I just think that's the levy point that he's trying to make. You can reiterate on that if you'd like, Councillor Gilmore. Thank you.
Councilor Wainfleet, go ahead.
Through you, Mayor. And I understand exactly what everybody's saying, and I'm on board with this because the numbers don't match. We never spend that much money. And I don't even know if there's that much education offered to everybody. Have we ever gone that far? Do we know, Mel?
So through the mayor to all of council, to be clear, this isn't just go-aways to conferences or training sessions. This is any training that might be brought in-house. This is also courses. Oftentimes we have to recruit someone that might be short a little bit on certain training or education levels, where we hoped or we're trying to progress them or asking them to do more than the current job. So we'd like to train them a little bit on something that will directly benefit their day-to-day job. So it involves things like that as well. I don't have like historical numbers readily available. at the moment, unfortunately.
But this would include what we're going to do on Friday. Or Tuesday. I'm sorry, I don't know what the date is exactly. When we're doing the integrity commissioner, the code of conduct, does that fall under when we're doing all of that? And it's a learning process, correct?
So through the Mayor Trail of Council, yes, anyone that we would bring in for any sort of training like that could involve multiple departments, often gets broken out and allocated to each department based on who was in attendance.
Right, which are not cheap. So I'm wondering, Councillor Gilmore, would it help if there was an itemized list that we could see every year, so you knew exactly where the dollars were going to?
Through you, Mayor, we can play the tape back. I don't think I ever said in any sentence yet tonight that I want to pare down or eliminate anybody from going to anything. I didn't say that. I've never said that. All I'm saying is that we're levying 45% more every year over year over year, or at least at least in 2019, the numbers were 50,000, we spent 28,000. That was 2019. The years after that were way less, and again, I don't want to hear that it's because of COVID, because I already know that. And like, I've got the numbers. All I'm saying is, why can't it just be closer? And if there's other opportunities, then take a little look, let it run over. It's just never gone over. And it's been levied heavy and not spent. And no one's ever been denied going to anything. But you keep telling me about all the great things that we have to go to. I'm not saying you don't go to anything. I'm just saying that we don't take advantage of that money, and for all the right reasons. Send somebody, bring the information back. That's how it should work. That's how it works in the private sector. We don't have a big trough and big straws. And I'm not trying to disparage anybody in our staff, because everybody, I know they work hard. But this just has not received the attention that, in my opinion, my ongoing speeches, it hasn't received its due. So I'll make a motion to get to where I want to be, unless I get some commitment that you're going to actually, for once, take a serious look at it.
Again, through you, Mr. Mayor. I hear the councillor, and I understand where he's coming from. I've heard Councillor Anderson. I've heard Councillor McClellan and Councillor Van Vliet. I think I heard sort of a similar comment coming from Councillor Anderson and Councillor McClellan talking about, going through to year end, having a pool set up, dealing with things in the new year by only incrementing the leftover monies to get back to where it needs to be. I don't know if that is satisfactory to the councillor, but if it is, that's perhaps direction to be given to staff at this time. I don't know.
Go ahead, Councilor Gilmore.
Well, I'll be satisfied if you commit to coming up with a new model for next year, and then I'm not gonna pin you down on a number now and reduce the number, because we're not going to spend the number that we got in there now anyway. And if that money rolls over and you commit to coming up with a new model, I'll be satisfied, finally.
Mr. Mayor, if that's the direction of council, we are more than prepared to do that. We will come up with a model based on what the discussions have been this evening to try and restrict future commitments to.
We're really just looking to make sure that whatever money is left over from this year rolls into next year. That's the commitment that we want, right?
Yeah, it's essentially some form of zero base, but not really. So, I mean, you people are a lot smarter than me. You'll figure something out. You understand where the bottom line is, I'm tired of levying stuff and not spending it year over year over year over year, and then having it go somewhere else. It's not fair. So, and I apologize for picking on this topic, but I don't do it because I'm trying to take away anything from any staff member or any of us, because we've never done that. It's just never been, the numbers have never made any sense. That's all. If stuff doesn't make sense to me, then I'm going to push back on it.
Any other comments, questions? Go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I saw the treasurer nodding her head in understanding. And if that is the direction of council, we can provide that model moving forward.
Okay, I would move that staff explore a new model for funding conferences and staff training based on the discussion that we've had. I think you've got the background in preparation for the 2024 budget.
Just one clarification item. You mentioned the staff training. Did you want council training included in that sort of framework as well, or is that
everybody?
All training and development?
Well, it's one line. Everybody has the same line. It's that's the line.
Seconder, Councillor Van Fleet. Any other discussion? All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Okay, I'm going to move to the a motion that the presentation by the treasurer regarding the draft 2023 operating budget be received, and whereas at its meeting of February 28th, 2023 and March 21st, 2023, the Council of the Township of Wainfleet has considered and evaluated the operational requirements for the township to ensure the efficient delivery of municipal services to the ratepayers of the Township of Wainfleet. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the 2023 operating budget be approved with a tax levy requirement of...
Point of order.
Go ahead.
I'm not sure that we've discussed everything that we want to on the operating budget, on items.
We will be opening for discussion after we move the motion.
Good. My first point of order.
Okay, I will continue. I'll just start at that last line now. So now, therefore, be it resolved that the 2023 operating budget be approved with a tax levy requirement of $6,215,639 for local municipal purposes, and that the 2023 infrastructure levy be confirmed with a tax levy requirement of $1,273,887, and that the 2023 capital levy be confirmed with a tax levy requirement of $872,655. Can I have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Van Fleet and Councillor McClellan. Okay, any discussion? Any discussion? Councillor Anderson, would you like to say something?
Yes, I'd like to bring up a readjustment under the allotment to do trees. I think that it would be a source of income, and I'd like to open to the fellow councilors that we reduce the tree amount, which was already reduced by staff trying to get us to a number. So they took 10,000, and I'd like to have a discussion with the rest of council on removing another $40,000 from that account. I did have the page.
So page 25 of the budget, page 77 of the agenda.
Thank you, Will.
Councilor McClellan, would you like to start?
If you want to get caught up, I'll wait for you.
It's okay, I just didn't have, my pages are cut off, so I couldn't see what page number I was actually looking at. You can go ahead. I'm on the
Through
screen
you,
here.
Mr. Mayor, to Richard. Question for you on these tree removals. When we take down a tree, what happens with the wood? Do we cut it up and leave it where it sits? I know Hydro One, that's what they do. They come, they leave it in 8-foot lengths or 10-foot lengths, and they leave it where it sits. It doesn't matter whose property it's sitting on, where they fell the tree, they leave it. Is that what we're doing, or what are we doing?
Through your worship to Councilor McClellan, it varies by situation. We do talk to the homeowners. If they burn wood or want the wood, we'll leave the wood there. Cases of hydro cutting trees down, in a lot of those cases, we actually go back to clean up that wood because they just cut it and remove it from their wires and just leave it there. And then it becomes a roadside issue or a hazard, then we remove it again anyways. So we either give it to the landowner if they want it. A lot of times we take it to the dump, and a lot of times we just leave it in sections. Like if a tree falls down in an open area that we allowed to leave it, we'll leave it there for several days. And if the public grabs it, they grab it, that's fantastic. But like through winter, we don't leave any of it there because if it snows, plowing, etc. So we have to remove it. And it either goes with the contractor or the homeowner, whoever wants it.
So I'm not talking about trees that fall down. You go down and you cut trees that are live, dead, standing dead. Hydro One comes down, they come down on my property. They mark the trees, they put an X mark on them, they come and cut them. They leave them sitting there. They lop them up, I don't know, they're 8-foot, 10-foot lengths, somewhere in that neighborhood. They just leave them sitting there. Nobody ever comes to pick them up. This town doesn't come to get them, Hydro doesn't come to get them, they just sit there. One of my neighbors might come along and says, can I pick up the wood? But I'm sure they're doing it a whole lot cheaper than what we're doing if we're cutting it up and dragging it away and bringing it to the homeowner or to the dump.
Through your worship, Councilor McClellan, in a lot of cases, we work with Hydro One. So we just did one on Augustine, for instance. They did all the aerial work anywhere near the wires, and then we took the rest of it down and we had to remove it all. But like if we have a contractor removing the tree, they take and they dispose of the whole thing for us.
Just sounds like a lot of money. Sounds like.
Councilor Gilmore, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. Let's back up on the emerald ash borer, which has been here now for 21 years in Ontario. Richard, what's the status or the ratio of dead ash trees that were taken down versus now live trees?
Through your worship to Councilor Gilmore, we aren't even probably taking 40% ash anymore. Most of the damaged trees that we're taking down are damages from windstorms, ice storms, maples, sugar maples, birch trees, pine trees that have been uprooted or at least heaving that are becoming dangerous. We're not taking as many ash as we used to. We're starting to get into other damaged trees from the recent events we've had with the high winds we've had in the past couple of years, as well as the freezing temperatures and the freezing and thawing cycles have seemed to damage a lot of the trees as well. So we're taking a lot more maples, pines, as compared to ash trees.
So maybe you should educate us on the implications of this potential motion and what, you know, what repercussions would come from that, if any, or are we just going to take less live trees down? I mean, I know we're taking lots of live trees down that, you know, I guess they need to come down. The storms, that's fine. I mean, I think you could keep some of that money in case there is a storm in a given year. But so if we reduce it to 150, what's going to happen?
Through your worship, similarly what we do every year, towards the end of the year, we keep an eye on the budget, and if we're getting to the max of that budget, we stop cutting, or we only take the trees that are absolutely dangerous at the time. And then we start building a list. So now we have a list ready for when the operating budget's approved, we'll be removing all those trees. And similarly, we do usually a checkup in the middle of summer and say, okay, where are we at budget-wise? We have to either start looking at cutting back some of the and maybe leaving them for an extra year. But again, that entails us getting an arborist to make sure that we're not going to be in a situation where these trees are going to come down causing us liability. Some of the tree removals that we're doing are on potential projects that we're doing for ditching or like roadside ditching, et cetera. So those are also included in that tree budget. If we're going to be doing a large stretch of a ditch clean out because it hasn't been cleaned in 20 years, and we've got a lot of big trees in that area, then we use that money as well to clear that area so we can do the proper ditching. By cutting the budget, yeah, we'll have to be a little bit more careful, and we'll have to be a little bit more selective as far as how we choose the trees we do. But again, you know, based on the storms we've had in the past couple of years, I have no idea what Mother Nature is going to keep giving us. And that's the issue we've been having, like even in the last storm. It wasn't just pine trees that came down. I mean, beautiful maples, we were losing half the trees. And that showed no signs of issues or damage to them in the first place.
So you already have a $190,000 list.
Through your worship, I wouldn't say I have 190,000 now, but again, as we progress through the year and we're doing our road patrols, we're spotting additional trees that maybe 2 years ago showed no signs of disease or damage. We do have a list right now. We're probably close to 70,000 right off the bat from carryover in the beginning of the year and the events that we've had in the spring.
Yeah, I don't doubt that there's quite a number. Like we started this number at 200 based on what was happening with the ash trees. And I can't tell you what it was prior to the emerald ash borer landing on our shores, but I doubt that it was that much. I just gotta wonder if there's going to be any end to this. Like we've spent $2 million cutting trees down during my watch, which is troubling, along with the other things that trouble me. We won't visit that again. But is there any end to this?
Through your worship, I mean, we've never done an actual urban inventory of all our trees. And like I said, like if you look at the feeder canal, for instance, 10 years ago, it was beautifully lined with beautiful trees. And now there's not a single live tree almost along the entire stretch. We've got sections that beautiful maples along some of our country roads that they're all starting to go like crazy. And we're talking, 4-foot trees that have been around for well over 100 years. Eventually, we're going to get to a point where we're not going to have any trees at all within our right-of-way. Because I'm not planting any within our right-of-way, let's put it that way. But we still want to try and keep as many live trees as we can and trim where we can to try and save them. But we're finding with the moisture content in the soils, they're just uprooting and all kinds of damage are occurring that we've never had in years past.
Councilor McClellan.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, this is going to go to Mr. Jemison for a moment on this. It's my understanding that most of the ditching in town are related to a municipal drain, one way or the other. They're pretty well all tied in. Is that a fair statement, or?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, so I believe we have 252 kilometers of municipal drain and over 500 kilometers of road, so less than that. I would say that they're all connected in a way, but there's more roadside ditch than municipal drain.
Okay, but the roadside ditches all run into a municipal drain.
No, we have quite a few going to the lake and quite a few going to the river independently.
Okay, so anything that's not going to the lake or the river are part of a municipal drain. So if we're cutting them to clean a ditch, that should be getting charged under the Municipal Drainage Act, correct?
Incorrect, only if they're on the municipal drain themselves. We only have the authority to work on the municipal drain itself, which then is billed to those property owners. If it's a roadside ditch and not a municipal drain, we don't have an assessment schedule.
Okay. Okay, thanks for clearing that up. I thought at one point somebody explained to me that they were all tied in and you paid for everything. It was a genius way of doing the town not paying for ditches. Okay, no, I see that, but I still, and Richard, I get it, they're dying, these old trees are dying. It's not just because the roots are wet and it's too wet and the wind comes up. They're not getting enough moisture in the summer. Our climate has changed, I get it, and I've read a lot of articles that maple trees aren't going to be here in 50 years. They won't be our native tree anymore. The climate's not going to let them be here just because of the moisture conditions. But we got to do something about this because it's out of hand. Like, I agree, we should drop it down to $150,000 and see where it gets us from there. I know I drive up Effingham Road, trees that fall, and they're falling from the public's property, and the municipality just trims them off at the road edge, and that's as far as they go. And you can drive up and down the country roads and see them hanging there, right? They're cut off behind the ditch, and that's it. I don't know if we go through and drag them all the way out or what we're doing, but it's an awful lot of money.
Through your worship, to Councilor McClellan, if a private tree falls on the road, and if we have the opportunity, we literally push the entire tree back on their property. One of the councilors can probably attest to it because it's probably happened to them, but that's what we do in most cases. I mean, if the entire tree and we can't get rid of it and we have to clean the road up, obviously, but whatever we can, we'll push it back on private property. And then we usually speak to Mark and make sure that they are responsible for cleaning it up.
Councilor Anderson, go ahead.
Yeah, I'd just like to loop back. My point on the 40,000 is absolutely and completely fiscal. I can't do anything about the bugs, the wind, the weather, or anything else. So for me, it's like a wonderful children's book called The Never-Ending Story. We're just never in this country ever going to be done with cutting down dead trees and species that are dying. It's just not going to happen. All the trees in the township, and historically I remember they're not all on our roadways. There's certainly there's 17% of this township is covered in some sort of forestry, managed wild or otherwise. And we have a certain responsibility for a portion of that. So for me, it's just a dollar value. I think if we cut down $150,000 worth of trees, that's all we need to cut down. And if something falls down, I'm sure we've got some shekels in the piggy bank where we can clean that up and cut it up and handle it like any other thing that happens. But at some point, as Councillor Gilmore said, it just goes on and on. And I don't know what the next tree breed is going to get bugged. I mean, the beaches already had their thing going with beach bugs, and it's just a lot of money. I don't think that 200,000 solves the dead tree problem any more than 150,000 will. I know there's a liability and I know there's risk, but I can't put that into my what if story either. Thank you.
Councilor Wainfleet.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. My only problem with decreasing the budget would be if we get to the total, say it's 150, and something falls, we're liable. So you got to weigh the pros and cons. I have, like, as Richard has said, I have been on the end where the tree has fallen and they just push it back into the farm and we take care of it. So, and I also, there's a lot, and the next big bug coming up is going to be attacking maple trees. It just hasn't gotten here yet. So I'm a little worrisome with decreasing that line because the liability factor. Because I haven't been a part of it, but I've seen how closely it can come.
Councilman Clown.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, so I understand that. But what happens if we hit the $200,000 mark and there's still trees fall down? It doesn't matter where you put the mark. We're going to hit it, right? It's, I mean, we were, what, $2,000 off last year? Amazingly, it was just, we came up at $2,000 short of the number, but it's going to happen no matter what you put it at. If you put it at 100,000, you put it at 200,000, you put it at 250,000. We're going to spend that money to get rid of those trees. It's an ongoing thing. So where do we say enough is enough? Right? It doesn't matter. Like Richard said, he's got $70,000 sitting there on the books right now that were left over from last year. It happens, right? But I don't know where we go with it, but it's a lot of money to be going out the door. And we're still liable. There's $70,000 worth of trees roughly that didn't get taken care of last year that we're liable for.
Questions, comments? Councilor Anderson.
Through you, Mayor. Historically, Richard, I don't know if you were here when we started this, but historically we went to tender on trees, and I think our first year was 46,000, and we piddled along at that for a while, and then we went to 100,000, and I don't know how many trees fell on liability within that term, and then we started getting billed over. We got billed over a year on $100,000 RFP, I guess, to 126, and then we went to 200, and we've been chugging along at 200. And we haven't solved the tree problem, and we haven't solved the bug problem, and it doesn't matter how much money we chase at it, we're not going to solve the problem. So I want to re-loop back to my fact that for me this is strictly a fiscal number. I can't determine liability. I can't determine if the wind knocks over a tree. I'm proposing that we go to $150,000 on the budget, and if we need to pick up a dead tree or cut something down, then we'll make that happen the way you do with lots of other stuff that comes to you that wasn't on your books and wasn't in your knowledge. So I'm sticking to my 150,000. Thank you.
So Councilor Anderson, would you like to put a motion?
I'd like to make a motion that we reduce the tree budget to $150,000 per annum.
Can I get a mover or a seconder? Councilman McClellan? Any other further discussion on it? Nope. Seeing none? Okay, then I'll just call the question. All in favor? Opposed? I'll be with you. All right, and that's carried. Okay.
Recess before you vote, because
Is there any other discussion on the budget? No? No further discussion? So you want to just take a 5-minute recess so we can organize? Okay. Okay. I'm going to now move that we have a motion that I have a motion that the presentation by the treasurer regarding the draft 2023 budget, operating budget, be received, and whereas at its meeting of February 28, 2023 and March 21st, 2023, the Council of the Township of Wainfleet has considered and evaluated the operational requirements for the township to ensure the efficient delivery of municipal services to the ratepayers of the Township of Wainfleet. Now therefore be it resolved that the 2023 operating budget be approved with the tax levy requirement of $6,175,639 for local municipal purposes, and that the 2023 infrastructure levy be confirmed with the tax levy requirement of $1,273,887, and that the 2023 capital levy be confirmed with a tax levy requirement of $872,655. Can I have a mover and seconder? Councilor Gilmore, Councilor McLeod. Any other further discussion? Seeing none? Okay, all in favor? Opposed? And that is carried. Okay, moving on to the administrative staff reports. Ms. Louie, would you like to give us a brief overview of your report?
Thank you. Through the Mayor to all of Council. So staff report ASR 003-2023 is a routine report outlined in the Municipal Act, which requires staff to prepare an annual report outlining the remuneration for 2022 for expenses paid to Council and board members.
Okay, I have a motion that the administrative staff report ASR 003-2023 respecting 2022 remuneration report be received for information. Can I have a mover and a seconder? Councilor McClellan, Councilor Van Fleet, any discussion? Councilor Gilmore.
Can I get an explanation of why Councilor McClellan's 30 cents lower than me again?
Councilor McClellan, would you like to speak to that?
No, it's not a serious question. I'm just trying to loosen up a bit from my previous discussions.
Any real discussions on that? I might have a quarter in my pocket. It is pretty good. Okay, so there's no other discussion, then I'll just call the question. All in favor? Opposed? And that's carried. Okay, moving on to the 2023 fees and charges. Ms. Louie, would you like to give us a brief overview of your report?
Okay, so through the Mayor to all of Council, ASR 004-2023, which was introduced earlier during the public meeting portion of the agenda, discusses the proposed user fees and charges for the township for 2023. So just a reminder of the change on page 12 to the per day community hall rental should read $300.88 plus HST. And at this time, staff is happy to answer any questions that council might have.
Okay, so I have a motion that the report ASR 004/2023 regarding the proposed user fees and charges be received, and that council approve the recommended user fees and charges contained within the Appendix A of the report, and that the general fees and charges bylaw attached as Appendix B be approved, and that council direct staff to amend Schedule A of Building Bylaw number 027-2012 to reflect the updated building fees and charges. Can I get a mover and a seconder? Councilor McClellan, Councilor Gilmore. Any discussion? Seeing none, call the question. All in favor? Opposed? And that's carried. Okay, moving on to the appointment of the Integrity Commissioner. Ms. Kirkham, can you please give us a brief overview of your report?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to all of Council. The Municipal Act provides a requirement that Ontario municipalities need to appoint an Integrity Commissioner. We have retained ADR Chambers since 2018, specifically Edward McDermott. So I am looking in this report for Council to appoint ADR Chambers for a term ending in 2026.
Okay, so I have a motion that the Administrative Staff Report ASR 005-2023 respecting the appointment of an Integrity Commissioner be received, and that a bylaw be prepared and presented to appoint Edward T. McDermott of ADR Chambers, Inc. as Integrity Commissioner pursuant to Sections 223-3 and 223.8 of the Municipal Act 2001, and that the mayor and the clerk be authorized to execute an agreement with Edward T. McDermott for the provision of Integrity Commissioner services for the term ending in 2026. Can I get a mover and a seconder? Councilor McClellan, Councilor Gilmore, any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed, and that's carried. Okay, moving on to the drainage staff reports. Mr. Jameson, would you please give us a brief overview of your report?
Great. Thank you through you, Mr. Mayor, to all of council. So Drainage Staff Report 1 for the year provides an update for the Biederman Municipal Drain Project, which was initiated by the City of Port Colborne. Following the procedures laid out in the Drainage Act, impacted property owners will be invited to the Court of Revision on April 17th, where appeals related to the assessment schedule will be heard. So the staff report recommends appointing one member of council to sit on the Court of Revision and an alternate.
Any discussion? Anyone? Yeah? Councilor Van Fleet, go ahead.
I am so nominating Councillor Gilmore for that position.
Councilor Gilmore.
I would gladly do it, but I'm on vacation. I'll be not here. So, sorry.
Councilor McClellan? We understand that. Councilor Anderson?
I nominate John.
I'd like to take the opportunity to nominate Sherry, as Sherry was previously on the Drainage Committee.
I'd second that. Mark, when's the date? I need to see if I'm here. Oh, hang on. I was like so prepared for Gilmore. Sorry. Hang on. What? Hang on. 17th. Tentatively, yes. Joan, you're coming with me.
Yeah, we'll do lunch and I'll go with you.
It's an evening thing, but okay.
Just to tidy this up then, I would move that Councillor Van Vliet be appointed as the member and Councillor Anderson be appointed as the alternate.
Councilor McClellan, thank you. Yeah, I'll just go for the whole thing. Okay. So I have a motion that Drainage Staff Report DSR 001-2023 respecting Court of Revision for the Biederman Drain be received, and that Councillor Van Fleet be appointed as a member of the Biederman Municipal Drain Court of Revision being hosted by the City of Port Colborne, scheduled for April 17th, 2023. And that Councillor Anderson be appointed as an alternate member of the Biederman Municipal Drain Court of Revision in the event that the township's primary member is unable to attend. Can I get a mover and a seconder? Any further discussion? For real? One last shot. Just saying. Okay, then all in favor? Opposed? That'll be carried. Okay, moving on to Community Development Services reports. Ms. Earl, would you like to please give us a brief overview of your report?
Yes, thank you. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of council. The Niagara region has initiated the 2023 Niagara Orthophotography Project to obtain new and updated orthophotography for the region. Staff are requesting that council authorize the mayor and the clerk to execute the 2023 Niagara Orthophotography Project participant agreement that's attached to the report in order for the region to proceed with the procurement process as updated. Orthophotography is very imperative in our township's daily operations. Thank you.
Okay, I have a motion that the planning staff report PSR 005-2023 be received and that council authorize the mayor and clerk to execute the 2023 Niagara Orthophotography Project participation agreement attached as Appendix A. Can I get a mover and a seconder? Councilor Gilmore, Councilor McClellan. Any discussion?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I just wanted to comment that this really is a sort of significant and useful project. The aerial photos that we'll be getting of Wainfleet through this are utilized by every department in day-to-day use. So new aerial photography is really, really important for us to get.
Councilman McClellan, go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Question on this aerial photography. We have a dumping problem. Is this something that we can get daily pictures of what's happening on this, or are they not that good?
Mr. Nam, would you like to speak to that?
Through your worship to Councilor McClellan. This is, we hire a company to come over and do an entire aerial shot of fly over the entire township. It's not an ongoing basis. It's a one-time aerial of the township.
Okay.
But it gives us a difference from last year, years before, so we can see the differences in topography as well as potentially other issues that we've noticed over the years.
Thank you.
Any other questions, discussion? Okay, then I'll call a question. All in favor? Opposed? And that's carried. Okay, moving on to the fire staff reports. Chief Alcock, would you like to provide a brief overview of your report?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of council. The report I have before you is the request for purchase of the command vehicle. This was originally brought forward as part of one of the capital budget projects. While I was developing the tender to go out for the new vehicle, one of the upfitting companies had come back with an option for a demo unit, which is it's a 2021. It was their demo that they used, and they would upfit it, complete with the cap and the bed slide, lights, sirens, radio, all in for a total of $79,882. Which results in a savings of about $25,000 from the original approved budget. So that's the request this evening.
Okay, so I have a motion that the fire staff report FSR 003-2023 respecting the purchase of a command vehicle be received, and that the fire chief be authorized to purchase one 2021 demo unit GMC Sierra 1500 crew cab 4-door four-wheel drive pickup truck, complete with all ancillary equipment from the lighting equipment in the amount of $79,882, excluding HST. Can I get a mover and a seconder? Councilor McClellan, Councilor Gilmore. Any discussion? Councilor Gilmore, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. Where's the 25,000 savings going?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that truck was being funded from reserves, so it just leaves the remaining 25 in reserves for future purchases.
Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, I'll just call the question then. All in favor? Opposed? And that's carried. All right, moving on to the backup generator replacement. Chief Alcock, would you please provide a brief overview of your memo?
Yeah, sometime between February 6th and February 10th, the backup generator at Station 4 was damaged by an unknown source. Staff had noticed that the generator sustained substantial damage, which you'll see in the picture on the memo there. We did have Niagara Region Police attend to create a report of the damage. We did contact our insurance company, but the deductible was more than, or almost more than the cost of the replacement. So we contacted our local supplier and electrical contractor, which you'll see is up for another renewal term coming up in another report. They happen to have a generator in stock. Our generator was beyond repair, so they replaced the generator, reinstalled it to new code standards. The existing generator was against the building, had to be moved away, upgrade the gas system, and reconnect. And while we were at that, we also installed security cameras at both stations 3 and 4 using the same system that is currently operated at Town Hall, Public Works, Library Arena, and the new central station. And that's all been included as part of this to hopefully prevent or capture should any future events occur.
Okay, so I have a motion that the memorandum from the fire chief respecting the backup generator replacement, Station 4 Schwab, be received for information. Can I get a mover and a seconder? Councilor McClellan? Councilor Anderson? Any discussion? Councilor McClellan, go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Obviously, this thing was hit by a truck or a snowplow, one or the other. Can we get some bollards put around this? Right? Normally, that's what happens in schools and all that, so maybe something we should get done, Morgan, is put some steel bollards around it, either that or a piece of Jersey barrier, whatever works. Richard's got, it's quicker, cheaper, easier, but
Yep, we can certainly look into it. I know, just given that capital budget's already been approved, bollards would have to be something to be included in the 2024 budget.
yeah, maybe he can find a couple pieces of armor stone to put around it, and it'll destroy somebody's truck before they destroy our generator next time.
For sure.
Councilor Gilmore?
Thank you, Mayor. Well, if we're funding it out of the, quote, emergency reserve, then why don't you just include the bollards and fund it all out of emergency reserve? And that's one idea. And the other question is, what's the difference between where the 25K is going and the emergency reserve?
So the consolidated fire reserve is meant for fleet and equipment, so PPE apparatus. The emergency reserve is for those funds where facilities are damaged. So, you know, if this was the generator or the fuel tank at the back of the arena, then that's what those reserves are for. It's not meant for taking away from what would essentially be a level of service operation.
Okay, so, but I don't see any point in waiting another year to put the bollards around.
For sure.
Just
Yep.
get it all done. My other question is, where is this located? What side, north, south, east, west of the building is this on?
This would be on the east side of the building, away from any public view.
And there's not a driveway there.
No,
So no truck hit it and no snowplow hit it.
correct.
Yeah. Somebody tried to steal it.
Absolutely. The gas was shut off.
All right.
Any other comments or discussion on it? Okay, no other comments, so I'll just call the question. All in favor? Opposed? And that's carried. Moving on to Public Works reports. Mr. Nam, would you please give us a brief overview of your report?
Good evening, Your Worship, members of council. Before you is Public Works Staff Report 002-2023, respecting the award for quotation for electrical services for the years 2023 through to 2025. This report outlines the bidders, this report is outlining the bidders that provide electrical services that will be used for all departments on an ongoing basis as required for immediate urgent repairs. Staff prepared the request for quotation in accordance with our purchasing policy, and at the time of closing, we received 8 quotations. Attached in the report is quotation results, with one bidder not providing the quotation document in their submission. Staff are recommending that council select the Cornell Feenstra Electric Limited as a preferred vendor for electrical services due to their lowest minimum charge per service call and capability of providing aerial bucket work.
Okay, so I have a motion that the staff report PWSR 002-2023 be received and that council authorize staff to select Cornell Feenstra Electric Limited as the preferred vendor for electrical services for 2023 to 2025. Can I get a mover and a seconder? Councilor McClellan, Councilor Van Fleet, any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? And that's carried. Okay, moving on to the award of tender for one four-wheel drive pickup truck. Mr. Nam, would you please give us a brief overview of your report?
Thank you, Worship and members of council. The next report is Public Works Staff Report 003-2023. Staff prepared a tender package and specifications for the four-wheel drive pickup truck to replace the current pickup truck presently in our fleet, and it's approaching the end of its service life. Staff reached out personally to 12 dealers that offered pickup trucks, and during the closing of March 1st, we did not receive any bids. Staff retendered and extended the posting for an additional week, and again notified the vendors. And at the closing, the final closing, we received one bidder.
Okay, so I have a motion that Public Works Staff Report PWSR 003-2023 respecting the award of tender for one four-wheel drive pickup truck be received, and that council authorize the manager of operations to purchase one four-wheel drive pickup truck from Niagara Motors, being the only bid submitted. Can I get a mover and a seconder? Councilor McClellan, Councilor Van Fleet, any discussion? Councilor Van Fleet.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'm just wondering what we're doing with the 2013.
Through your worship, to Councillor Van Vliet, we will be putting it on Gov Deals unless it's needed for necessary purposes for the year. But the all intents and purposes will be disposing of the asset.
Okay, I was just wondering if it could be used for like garbage pickup during festivals, the fair, the beach. We bought this one from the beach. Sorry.
Through your worship,
Like that-
Councillor
that
Van
one-
Vliet,
that one
I do
utility
agree,
vehicle that
and we have discussions about that. We're just in the process right now of finalizing plans with the region to look after their beach. And if that's the case, we could be utilizing it for the beach this year because we're postponing the purchase of the new one that we're getting for the beaches anyways.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, just to build on that, though, one of our concerns is the truck might not be available until after the summer season. The new truck might not be available until after the summer season passes.
Any other questions, comments? Seeing none, so I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed, and that's carried. Okay, moving on to the award of tender for the municipal water connections. Mr. Nan, would you please provide a brief overview of your report?
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you and members of council, staff in collaboration with Spreed Engineering Associates prepared a tender following the township's procurement policy for the replacement of the aging water distribution lines and connections. Township notified various qualified contractors capable of performing the work, and additionally notified the Niagara Construction Association for distribution to their membership as well. Upon the closing of the township received a single bidder, and staff are recommending the council direct the manager of operations to engage the services to that bidder.
Okay, so I have a motion that Public Works Staff Report PWSR 004-2023 respecting the award of tender for municipal water connections be received, and that council direct the manager of operations to engage the services of Peters Excavating to replace the township water connections. Can I get a mover and a seconder? Councilor Gilmore, Councilor Van Vliet, any discussion? Councilor Gilmore, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. Richard, where did the 195 figure come from? Did Spreet come up with that?
Through your worship, to Councilor Gilmore. No, they did not. Those numbers came prior to Spreet finalizing the drawings. That was me putting together some numbers. Obviously, the water aspect of construction has changed a lot since I was in the water department, and those prices that I put together didn't come anywhere near what the costing of drilling is, nor the purchasing of the parts and supplies that have gone sky high since I worked in water.
Okay, thanks.
Councilor McClellan, go ahead.
You, Mr. Mayor. Richard, I'm just wondering, I know we don't want a trench across the parking lot, but would it have been cheaper to do an open cut than directional bore?
Through your worship, that is a discussion we will be having with the successful bidder to see if there's any additional cost savings, obviously because we are over budget. But again, it's restoration costs, and the issue we're having is every time we open cut anything around here, we seem to find more than what we bargained for.
Yeah, maybe not $200,000 more.
Any other comments, questions? Okay, seeing none, then I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Moving on to the award of purchase for the asphalt recycler and the hot box trailer. Mr. Nan, would you please provide a brief overview of your report?
Thank you, Your Worship. As mentioned, staff report 005 for the purchase of the asphalt recycler and hot box. Staff reached out for quotes for the purchase individually to the various suppliers, which there are very few suppliers of. And we've also reached out to look into the LAS Sourcewell procurement that we are a member of now. And we actually found some additional savings by going through the Sourcewell procurement to the same vendors. So staff are recommending that we award it to Amoco Equipment through the Sourcewell procurement process.
Okay, so I have a motion that Public Works Staff Report PWSR 005-2023 respecting the purchase of a new asphalt recycler and hot box trailer be received, and that council direct the manager of operations to proceed with the purchase of the 2023 2-ton Falcon asphalt recycler and hot box trailer utilizing the LAS Sourcewell procurement. Can I get a mover and a seconder? Councilor Anderson? Councilor McClellan? Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? And that's carried. Okay, moving on to the award of purchase for the tandem plow truck. Mr. Nan, would you please provide a brief overview of your report?
Thank you, Your Worship, members of council. As mentioned, this is for the replacement of our tandem plow sander truck. While staff was preparing the formal specifications, we did similarly what we did with the hot box. We reached out through the LAS Sourcewell procurement. And the budget quotations that we received, we find that there's additional savings that can be had by going through the LAS procurement process as well. And we're suggesting that we purchase through the Sourcewell program on this one as well.
Is I have a motion that Public Works Staff Report PWSR 006-2023 respecting the purchase of a new tandem plow truck be received for information, and that council direct the manager of operations to proceed with the purchase of the 2024 International Tandem Plow or Tandem Truck with the Viking plow and sander equipment utilizing the LAS Sourcewell procurement. Can I get a mover and a seconder? Councilor McClellan? Councilor Anderson? Any discussion? Councilor Gilmore, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a question. The 206, you're planning to sell that as well on Gov Deals. Will that... will the proceeds from that net the debenture?
Through the mayor to Councilor Gilmore and all of council, yes. So the proceeds of that would go to offset the cost of the truck, therefore reducing the debenture.
Any other questions, comments? Councilor McClellan, go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, just what kind of delivery are we looking at this, Richard?
Through your worship, our last discussion with them is they're actually hoping to potentially deliver the chassis to Viking for the actual box installation or fabrication and around Q4 of 2023 and potentially delivery in Q2 to Q4 of 2024 for the total. So anywhere between Q4 of 2023 and Q1 of 23 or 24 will be delivered to Viking, and then we'll get it the quarter after that. So potentially it's a year off.
Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? And that's carried. Moving on to the equipment rental fees for 2023. Mr. Nan, would you please provide a brief overview of your report?
Thank you, Your Worship and members of council. This is my final report for the evening. It's an ongoing supply list that we prepare every year. We reach out to the various vendors for different supply services to give us the updated quotations that all departments can utilize for their services for the entire year.
Okay, so I have a motion that Public Works Staff Report PWSR 007-2023 respecting equipment rental rates for 2023 be received, and that the equipment rental rates detailed in the report for 2023 be supported. Can I get a mover and a seconder? Councilor McClellan, Councilor Anderson, any discussion? Councilor McClellan.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Richard, these rental rates where the trucks and Bobcats and that, they're operated or they're bare?
Through your worship, the trucks come with operators, and the small equipment does not come with operators.
Okay.
Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, call the question. All in favor? Opposed? And that is carried. Okay, we're going to go to the review of correspondence. Moving on to the William E. Brown graduation party request for fee waiver of Community Hall. Is there any discussion respecting the correspondence requesting the fee waiver at Community Hall for the Web Grade 8 graduation? Councilor Gilmore, Howard, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. I would move that we waive the fee, and I assume it comes out of council grants.
Can I get a seconder on that? Councilor McCullen? Any other further discussion on it? Seeing none? Oh, does the treasurer need to speak to this?
Well, through the mayor to all of council, no, I just don't know if people watching at home can see my head nodding. So yes, this would come from the council donation line.
Okay, any other discussions on it? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed, and that is carried. Moving on to the Wainfleet Skating Club request for carnival advertising. Is there any discussion respecting the correspondence regarding the Wainfleet Skating Club carnival advertising? Councillor Van Fleet.
You knew it. Through you, Mr. Mayor. I don't know which one my colleagues would like to pick, but we generally, we as in the township, has always sponsored this. So I'd like to see us do it. So, I don't know, maybe a full page would be nice at $100. Anybody, taken out of the same fund?
Can I get a seconder? Councillor Gilmore? Any other discussion on it? Okay, seeing no other discussion, all in favor? Opposed, and that is carried. Moving on to bylaws. I have a motion that the following bylaws be read and passed this 21st day of March 2023. Bylaw number 012-2023 being a bylaw to appoint an integrity commissioner for the Township of Wainfleet. Bylaw number 013-2023 being a bylaw to establish and regulate payment of various fees and charges within the Township of Wainfleet. Can I get a mover and a seconder? Councillor McCullen, Councillor Van Fleet, any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed, and that is carried. Notices of motion. This one's for me. It's regarding the accessory building zoning review. Whereas the Township of Wainfleet has adopted zoning bylaws to regulate the use of lands and the character, location, and the use of buildings and structures. And whereas members of council have been approached by residents expressing concern with the accessory building zoning requirements. And whereas a significant number of minor variance applications considered by the Committee of Adjustments are for variances to accessory building requirements. And whereas zoning bylaws are intended to be updated from time to time to reflect the needs of the municipalities, now therefore be it resolved that planning staff be directed to review the zoning requirements for accessory buildings under zoning bylaws 581-78 and 034-2014, and that planning staff report back to council with options and recommendations for amendments. Can I have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Van Fleet, Councillor McCullen, any discussion? Councillor Gilmore, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, this question's for you. Specifically, what types of things are you looking for?
Just looking at the specific requirements for accessory buildings. We get a lot of people calling in about wanting to build garages, things like that, and they're finding it very difficult. They're going through the minor variance process, and we're seeing a lot of people requesting that, and in many cases, this has already been done on several properties, and people are finding it a hard time, and so I look to our planning staff as to whether or not we could do something about it. They advised me that we could move forward with a review of this and come back with a report and possibly make some updated changes to it.
Okay, so, but again, specifically, would things like taking lot coverage to 10% township-wide, like we did that in the hamlets, is that
could be
height,
something
that kind of stuff?
It could be into that direction, because commonly we are seeing like 10% increases with those accessory buildings outside of the hamlets. We know that now you're allowed to do that inside the hamlets, but outside of the hamlets, that's still not permitted. So that is something that maybe they will bring back to us. I'll maybe leave that to Ms. Earl to comment on.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the rest of council, staff will do a wholesome review on everything from lot coverage, height, setbacks, those types of things, both within the hamlets and outside the hamlets. I know we just did the hamlets, but we're going to look at it and the other municipalities and what the current practice is. So we'll give you guys some options in a wholesome review. This will be opening up the zoning bylaw, so it might not be the only amendment at the time. So I'm just going to give a heads up now that if we're going to open it up, we're going to do other housekeeping amendments. Likely you're going to see some changes in accordance with the new provincial legislation like Bill 109 and 23, and that it is a public process, so this will also be a little bit lengthier process. So we'll get this back to council as soon as possible.
Any other comments, questions, discussion? Councilor McClellan?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I know you're on a rural lot, acre and a half, 2 acres or more. More and more you see people that are putting up their garages or their back shops, and with people working from home, people doing, there's more time spent at home. I'm not sure if that's going to continue or not, but you see more and more where they want to put a covered porch, or, right, so the roof is covering, but it's open space, basically. It's not all closed in. I think that should be taken under consideration so that, you know, a guy can sit out there and not bake in the sun, but he's still outside, or, you know, with the way the internet is and everything today, I think some of that is more good, usable space that, you know, people can use. We should take that into consideration. On the same token, I'm not a big fan of sea cans being out there and never being painted or cleaned up. You know, if they get covered inside it, no, I'm not picking on anybody, but if they're out there and they get covered and sided, or, you know, with siding or something on it, and they're color painted to match the home that they're beside, I can think that they're livable. Otherwise, I kind of think they're a scourge on the countryside, but that's just my opinion on a couple of things that we should look at. Lindsay?
Cyril?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. Staff have noted that, and that will be something that we can include in our review.
Okay, thanks.
Any other comments or discussion? Okay, so seeing none, all in favor? Unopposed, and that is carried.
So, okay, so I want to tell you that next meeting I'll have a notice of motion up, and I'll get it figured out by then. General topic will be Phil. Yeah, Phil. Dirt.
No, wait, soil.
Soil, dirt.
Soil.
Dirt.
Okay, I now have a motion that council move into closed session to discuss item under section 239 2B, personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees, one matter regarding an identifiable employee. B, item under section 239 2D, labor relations or employee negotiations, one matter regarding a labor relations matter. C, minutes of closed meetings of council held February 7th and February 21st, 23. Can I get a mover and a seconder? Councilor McClellan, Councilor Gilmore. Any discussion? Seeing none. All in favor? Opposed? And that is carried.